that function near us, I've been wearing them. They're, yeah. They had the other, the purchase on the homemade one. Do I make those or do I make the regular? Because I could put wires and leaves. Yeah, I have one. And it works better than this. I have a deviated septum, so I only breathe out of half of my nose, so it would always manage about that half of it. It's kind of hard to breathe. Yeah. I mean, we've been wearing them. Yeah. The barn.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to wait a couple more minutes here. You're a little early. Make sure everyone's joined. We'll do a quick Zoom tutorial for those that are new to make sure everyone is seeing what they need to see and hearing what they need to hear. And we will get started. My name is Corey. I'm the Education Director with Massaro Farm. We have Ted Jones with Jones Apiary here, and we're going to get started shortly. So I do want to make sure our chat feature is functioning properly. In the upper right-hand corner, you should see an option, or it might be in the bottom, depending on your view. You should see an option to join the chat. If someone could do me a favor and just say hello in the chat so I know that that is working and that you're hearing me well. Hey, there we go. Thank you, Carrie and Karen. I appreciate it. We're going to have that chat feature open as we go so that you can ask questions. We got 35 people that are early. We got 35 people so far that are early. Okay. And we are live. We're going to wait a little bit longer.
Yeah. Well, the last night yesterday morning, like 75. And I slumped it off at 5 o'clock.
Now that suit's from Australia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We went to the convention.
Wow.
The bee contest there. And I bought one. I keep it for spare because ours get all cruddy. Propolis. Even though you wash them, they're never white again.
Yeah.
I keep that for people that don't want to get all crud. I mean, the suits are clean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Bring it in now, huh?
Yeah. There's a waiting room, and I have to kind of approve them as they go. So.
Oh, okay. Really? This is technology way over my head. I'm on the Farm Bureau Board of Directors. We did one last week.
Yeah.
Everybody's there tech savvy except me, but after a while I got the hang of it.
Yeah.
It is different.
We did have issues. We did one last week, and we had some issue with like multiple users trying to join. But thankfully that looks like it's not an issue this time around, so we're good. So folks, if you are just joining us, welcome. We're waiting a couple more minutes to make sure we have everyone, and we will get started. When you do join, if you can please make sure that you are muted and that your video is off as well. That way we don't have to switch between different views. And also, in order to communicate, we're going to use the chat function. If you're having trouble finding that, it should either be on the bottom of your Zoom platform or the top right, depending on what your view is set at. I opened up the chickens. If you want to check on the rabbits, that'd be great. I left the goats in because otherwise they're going to be jumping on the fence, making a bunch of noise while we're trying to do this. Oh yeah, for sure. All right, good morning, everyone. We're waiting a couple more minutes to make sure everyone is here and on. If you could do me a favor, just because we have so many participants today, please make sure that you are muted, which I think I can do on my end. And also, if you could just turn your video, set your video to off, that way to make sure we are only seeing the hives here. See some of you already turning a video off. Thank you very much. If you're new to Zoom, does take some getting used to, but basically what you want to do is make sure you're setting your screen to active speaker. You should see a button that says, switch to gallery view, or it says switch to active speaker. You're going to want to set it to active speaker so you can see the hives here. And if you're having trouble with any of that, there is a chat feature. So rather than unmute yourself, what you can do is either in the upper right-hand corner or on the bottom of your screen, you should see a chat feature, and you should see we already have a couple people saying hi and good morning there. We already have one question, which is excellent. If you're having a question, you can send us a note to make sure you are seeing what you need to see. And I apologize if you keep hearing more dings, or that might just be on my end, but those are just new folks joining the meeting. Oh, thank you for letting me know. The audio is off. Thank you. We're going to speak up as loud as we can, but please be sure to let us know if there is any other issues with the audio as we go. We got 78. And I do want to add to the folks that are here listening in, if for some reason, your connection isn't working out well, or you're having trouble figuring out how to use the platform, no worries. This whole session is going to be recorded and sent out to all of our participants. So in case you miss out on it this time around, or if you have to leave halfway through, no worries. This is recording and we will send it out to folks. We're getting a couple more materials ready here, and we will be starting soon.
Now they'll be able to hear me from over there?
You're gonna have to speak up, and if they are having trouble, they'll let me know and I'll just move in closer.
Okay. So
Thankfully, it's not windy, so we're in pretty good shape. Well, thank you for joining us, Paula. We appreciate it. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Ted, we actually already have one question while we're waiting to get started here. So Joe is asking, I overwintered with 2 deeps with a candy board. I inspected last week and noticed that the bees ate through most of the candy board and were putting comb and capped brood and larvae in the empty space. What should I do?
It's honey supers on. They're looking for room.
So Ted said to put honey supers on there. They are looking for a room.
You can scrape off that stuff that they built. Smoke it good to make sure the queen runs down. I would also inspect for swarm cells.
Okay. Ted, I think I'm going to move a little closer here. That way folks can hear us well. And, oh, that's not what I wanted.
Want me to make sure you got enough cord here? Yeah, maybe you should move closer.
Yeah. All right, folks, we're going to move in a little bit further here. So sit tight. Okay. I see that question about turning the camera horizontal. If I do that, just let me know if it auto adjusts. Oh, hey, look at that. It does. Oh, good, Joe. You're able to hear Ted. That's perfect. Thank you. Sure, I could just be able to move this. I can use that as a home base if you'd like. That's right. You can leave them there on the grass. It's fine. All right. I think
you want to go over this way.
everyone is here. I'll just carry it with me and I'll follow you around. We don't have to-
I'll put it here in case you decide to, because basically I'm not gonna, once I get going, we're not moving too much.
That's true. Okay.
Corey, you want me to move some of your stuff here so you don't trip on it?
I'll just do one of those.
Okay.
I don't want my stuff getting dirty. Thank you, though.
I'm just more concerned about glasses and.
Oh, gotcha. If you want to put it right like on top of the rock or something. Yeah, that works out perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think we're ready to roll, Ted, whenever you are. And picture a crowd of 70 people because we got to speak up.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Ted Jones. I own Jones Apiaries with my wife, Becky. We raise bees, we sell bees, we sell honey. And I also take care of the bee yard for the Connecticut Beekeepers Association here at Massaro Farm. We're going to do package installation today. It's only 40 degrees right now, but we'll show you how to do it when it's cool. And we will not be opening any hives today. We thought we might be, but the weather's not going to cooperate. So with that, I'm going to get started here. Sure, a lot of you got packages yesterday, or you got some coming today. Packages come like this. This is called a bee bus. It's new in the last 3 or 4 years. It's all plastic, and that's what ours came in. The other way is a wooden box like this. And it comes with the bees, a queen, and a feed can, and a queen inside. So if you get one like this, you're gonna have to take the can out to get to the queen. So when you do that, you're gonna pop it like that. You won't hurt the bees, okay? But they're all clustered. We wanna get them off the queen cage. Yeah. I lost my hive tool already. So you're gonna get the syrup can out like this. Okay, you step that aside. In there's gonna be a queen cage hanging. There's a slot in the wood. You'll see that slot. And there'll be 3 types of cages. This is the JBZ cage. The 3-hole cage, which has been around for 100+ years. Or the California Mini. And they've been around a long time too. So every package producer has their queen cage that they like to use. Today ours will be a JBZZ cage. So for now we're gonna put the lid back on to keep the bees in there. And we're gonna prepare our hive. I just want to show you the cages again. California Mini, JBZZ cage, excuse me, 3-hole wooden cage, and the JBZZ. Now, the next thing, they all come with candy in them. The JBZ is very easy. When you put your queen in, you make sure you pull that cap off. That allows the bees to eat the candy out. If you put it in with the cap on, they'll never release the queen. The 3-hole cage, there's corks on each end. You must make sure you pull out the right cork. So it'll be, this much of the cage is gonna be white. That's full of candy, queen candy. So you're gonna pull that cork out. This end here is another cork. That's how they put the queen in there. You don't wanna pull that out because that would be direct release. And they may kill the queen. So make sure you always get the candy out from the white end with the candy. The California Minis come with a tube, and you put the tube in after. I don't know too many package producers that use a California Mini, but just so you know, it could be out there. Okay, so we have our package. I'm gonna move this down.
And just while Ted's getting that together, I do want to mention some folks are asking questions. We're going to save most of the questions till the end, just so we can make sure you might have your question addressed over the course of the webinar.
All right, one last thing to cover. A lot of you will be starting on foundation. So with the 3-hole cage, I tie a piece of thin wire and we're gonna suspend it. Remember, we're gonna have a feeder over top. Do not suspend your queen there. You don't want the feed dripping on her. So off to one side. We got some cold nights coming. When it gets cold, they're gonna cluster around the candy or the feed and the queen. So you don't want the queen out here. You want her on the edge of the feed supply so they cluster on both, okay? And you want the screen exposed so they can communicate and feed with her. And what I do, just put a thumbtack where it's hanging. If you don't have to use a wire, if you have existing comb, you can push it in the comb, which we're gonna do. But put a thumbtack on the frame. You remind yourself where that cage is when you get ready to take it out. The JZBZ, excuse me, is easy. I just stick a nail through and it's gonna suspend between 2 frames. Just like that. The California Mini, I do the same thing. I put a wire around it. Some people use duct tape, but it's hard for duct tape to stick on a wax-coated foundation. You don't want the queen falling down on the bottom of the hive tonight because guess what? They're all gonna move up to the feed and all get in a cluster and then she'll freeze. So it's very important to keep her up near the top, near the feed. Any questions on queens before we move on?
Let's give folks a second. Any questions on queens?
No?
Not on queens. We have a question about some larvae. We can hang on to that for a later time though.
All right.
When do you remove the cage?
I wait 7 days.
All right, 7 days.
I don't want to disturb her. That's what I do. Some people do 5. I do 7. All right.
Are Connecticut queens available?
Kind of early for those. I don't know of any offhand. It's usually in the middle of the end of May, because you have to, when they start grafting, you have to have a drone population, and our drone populations are just getting up in the last 2 weeks. That's why we get ours from California. All right, I wear a veil. It's not fun to get stung in the eye. I know some people don't, but safety first.
And while we do that, I'm going to transition to this. That way it's a little more stable for folks now that we know that folks can hear all right. So bear with me, folks. We're just going to adjust some of this here. See if that'll work.
All right, so you can see a queen cage up top. This is a 3-hole cage. And you see the can of syrup. That's what they use while being transported for feed. I have a box arranged here. We went through the frames, make sure they're all good and healthy, no disease. And this dead out had some honey. And that's really good. I mean, it's too bad it died, but at least we got some honey. So we're gonna put those close to where we're gonna dump the bees in so they have food. If you're on foundation, you don't have that option. That's why it's very important to feed. So we're gonna take the queen out. There she is. She's in there with attendants. Can you see that? Or?
I think you can. So a couple questions about the queen. In a horizontal hive, where would you place the queen? Closer to the hive opening or on the other side, closer to the Boardman feeder?
I don't use Boardman feeders.
Okay.
I'm going to show you how to feed. Boardman feeders, when it's cold at night, they go back up. They won't take the food.
And is it important to hang the cage with candy end up to prevent dead workers in cage from blocking the exit?
Yeah, I always do candy up. Some people do candy down. Like I say, there's 10 ways to do it.
Okay.
I'm showing you the way we do it.
And
candy up.
And one more. First timer, I installed my bees on Thursday, but did not remove the cork from the queen cage. Can I do it now?
On the candy side?
They didn't specify, but I'm assuming on the candy side.
I'm going to show you right now. Here's a picture. You got a picture? You can
There we
see
go.
the white here. That's the candy. right here. That's the cork we take out, not this one here. Everybody see that all right?
I think they can see that pretty well.
All right. So we're going to take that cork out of the candy.
And we're losing a bit of audio. Are other folks experiencing some challenges with the audio? Just wondering if that's on our end. All right. Okay, seems like some folks are hearing all right. Some folks are hearing okay. All right, so if you're having a hard time hearing, it might be the volume on Zoom itself. But let me know if you continue to experience problems with that.
All right, so you see here, I've taken the cork out of the candy side, okay? So we have comb here. We're going to push that into the comb, the queen cage. Like I said, off center. So I have a frame here. We're going to do it off center, right? Because we don't want the feed dripping on her. Of course, it's cold. And I'm going to squeeze it against the other frame. All right, next thing, I'm going to pry the jar out. Let's see what they look like here. All right, they're all around the jar, so we don't want to crush a lot of bees taking it out. So what I do, I'm going to lightly spray it. This is sugar cold.
And some folks are asking what the spray is.
Sugar water.
Sugar water, all right. And what ratio?
1 to 1.
Okay,
Same as the feed.
1 to 1.
Of course, it's not pumping them. All right, well, so much for that. I spray it just so they get sugar water on them when we drop them. So we got to get them off the can because they're all clustered. So we're going to bump them. And you won't hurt them when you do it. About like that. Now the can comes out. Set that aside. Now we're going to dump our bees in. Okay, I'm just going to shake them in gently.
Where do you get your packages from?
These came from South Carolina.
South Carolina. And someone's asking, why don't you use 2 to 1 ratio in the spring?
Okay, hang on a second. We want to finish this, okay?
Oh, gotcha.
We're going to put the frames in. Now there's a pile of bees on the bottom. Do not push them in. Just set them there. If there's any resistance, as the bees move up on the frames will drop into place. You don't want to crush anything. So we got 10 frames in there. All right, we're going to put our inner cover on. Smooth side down. So we're going to feed. There's 2 ways you can feed. somebody mentioned the Boardman feeder. That's down on the bottom, and what happens, they can't go up and take it when it's cold. So we feed right over the cluster of bees. You can do it with a jar. I put 3 small sticks around to elevate it. And we put it over the hole. Bees come up and take the syrup down. The other thing is, some people want to use top feeders on top or the frame feeders. The top feeders is the same problem. They have to go up and over to get it, but when it's cold, they're not going to go up and over. They stay in the cluster. So we want continuous feeding. The in-hive feeders, what happens with those? They gorge themselves with the syrup. And when they do that, they're drawing cells out. They put syrup in instead of giving the queen a chance to put an egg in there. So you want them to take it real slow. We use 1-to-1 sugar because that's the closest thing to nectar. And that's what stimulates the queen, thinking there's a nectar flow, to have the bees build more comb and for her to lay more eggs. And that's what we want to do. We want to expand the colony. Okay, the other way you can feed, here again, it's right over the cluster. There's a feeder like this. It holds a gallon. It'll last you probably a week. It has tiny holes so they can't take the syrup fast. And that fits right over the hole. What I do is I hold it up and let it stop draining so you don't drown them. Okay, now we put it over the hole, set it right in there. Now you notice we have a slot here. I'll put a stick in there to block the hole, so if it gets real warm, we don't have robbing going on. Take an empty super. You should have an empty honey super you won't need right away. We put that over there. And then we put our cover on. And we wait 7 days to go back in and inspect. If the queen's released in 7 days, you should see eggs. If she just got released the day before you got there, you may not have eggs right away. So I wait another 5 days to see if you have eggs. If not, call your package producer and tell them. They have extra queens if you need them. And that's about it. We wait. Now, because this hive is on a comb, and if you have comb, that hive is going to rapidly expand because they don't have to waste time building. They're going to waste time. They're going to make time on building the colony strength because they already have the comb there. Okay? So you have to monitor. When you get the 7th to the 8th frame with bees and brood, it's time to put that second box on. Because even though they're new queens, if they get crowded, they're going to swarm. So you must pay attention. The other thing I didn't mention, it wouldn't hurt on putting like a third of a strip of pollen patty if you have one, or protein patty. Give them protein on the cold days. It's optional. You're supposed to get some warm days next week, so it should be all right. But you can do that. Any questions? We're going to do another one up here, but we can take some questions now.
All right. We got more than a couple. I'll try and pick some popular ones. All right. What is that kind of feeder called you just put in?
They call it a Bee Smart feeder, but it's a hive top feeder.
Okay.
It's a gallon.
If there's not any comb, would an in-frame feeder be better?
No.
No. Okay.
The reason is, remember I said we don't want them gorging themselves with syrup. An in-frame feeder, they can take all they want. They gorge themselves, and they put it into the cells that they're drawing out. In-hive feeders are terrific for the fall when you want to feed and bulk up. Then you're using 2-to-1 syrup.
Do you treat the package for mites? I heard people treating their newly installed packages for mites.
I do not, because where they came from, they were treated already. You have a new queen. You have bees shook in there from many hives, so they're really confused. You start treating and things like that, you're disrupting pheromones, and everybody's trying to get used to the new queen pheromones. You have no brood, so there should be no mites. If there are, they're going to die. You know, let this colony get established. You know, treat them with kid gloves, okay? We don't want to start messing around.
All right, one more quick one. We use an entrance reducer to prevent robbing. When should we remove it?
When the bottom box is all drawn out full of bees.
Okay, perfect. We have a couple more in there, but I'll try and space
Oh,
them
go ahead.
out.
We got,
Okay.
that went quick.
Can you tell us how to install the protein patty?
I put it right on top of the frame, just off from where your queen is.
All right. And I already have a top feeder, new Beekeeper, and it holds 3.2 gallons. Do I fill the top feeder to the top, all 3.2 gallons?
Wow, 3.2 gallons. Well, here again, the top feeder is only going to work when it's warm.
Okay.
Right? That's why we do the jar or this other feeder.
Do you leave
If
the
we
wax?
do a jar, I would prefer a jar.
And someone asked how big the holes are in that jar.
I'm just going to tell you that.
Ah, there we go.
There's a picture. Very tiny holes.
Let's see if they can see that.
Take a nail.
Like a nail.
I
Okay.
take like a number 6 nail and I just make 3 holes. That's all I have.
Okay.
This was a student that I had, and he wanted to make a lot of holes. You just need 3. 6 penny nail, 3 holes in the triangle.
Okay, so three small
just,
holes work.
Just to get them going, okay? I
Okay.
mean, the hive feeder, the top hive feeder will work, but it's going to be very slow, especially on cold nights. When they stop taking in syrup, they stop building wax, and she stops laying eggs.
Got it.
Okay? Unless it really gets warm, you know. In June, it'll be all right, but it's cold here now. We're trying to get them to build comb, especially if you're a new beekeeper on foundation, okay? Because it takes time.
And then one more. Do you leave the wax paper on the protein patty?
Yes, I just peel back a corner.
Okay.
You know, see if there's one in the box. I think I brought some.
If you're using mediums instead of deeps, does everything apply the same? Wait until 7 to 8 frames filled before adding another box?
Yep. When you're using mediums, it may be a little slower to build up, but they'll build up on it. You can use mediums. Just remember with mediums in the winter and the fall, I always tell people you need 5 the winter over it. Because 2 mediums in square inches equal almost a deep frame.
Right.
So it's better to be on the high side of the honey to be safe, because you don't want to run out.
I added my newbies 2 weeks ago. When should I be treating for mites or testing for mites?
I would wait till that bottom box is full. I would wait till end of May.
Okay.
Because remember, it's a package. You just started out. There were no mites.
I have a colony from last year that survived, but when I opened the hive this spring, I found a lot of larvae crawling around on the frames. I fear my colony may be too weak to deal with the larvae. Are they wax moths or hive beetles? What should I do?
Sounds like hive beetles. If you're feeding a protein patty, take that off, because that's what attracts them. How many frames of bees do they have?
Let's see if they can hear that. Amel, how many frames do you have?
Thank you. There, my wife brought over a patty. We already got it. This is the size I use. It's about 1/3 of a full patty. It's got a little wax paper. I peel back that much, and I'll slide it under.
Someone's asking, I had a readout from last year. How can I tell if the comb or honey left over is good to use in another hive?
What was that question?
I had a readout from last year. How can I tell if the comb or honey left over is good to use in another hive?
A readout. What's a readout?
Oh, dead out.
Oh, dead out. Okay. Dead out. Well, inspect it. If you're not sure, call the bee inspector. He can come out and inspect it for you, or if you got a mentor.
Okay.
If the comb looks good, do you know the reason why they died? Was it the mites?
Let's see. While Joe's getting back to us about that, we had a question. So to confirm, 1 bee patty directly on the frames, then the inner cover, then either a top hive feeder or jar of 1-to-1 sugar water, correct?
Right, but the top hive feeder is the type I showed you, not the one that's a super that fits on top.
Okay. We'll see if Joe gets back to us about why, if he has a reason to suspect the dead out. And to folks who are asking questions, they're coming fast. So if I miss one, I do apologize. You can try and ask it again later on in the session in case we passed it.
We're going to leave in front of the hive. Eventually, when they get the scent, they'll go in there. We can't shake them all out. We try our best. Okay? that it for questions for now?
For now, I'm sure we'll get more as we
Yeah.
continue.
All right, we have another one here. We're going to do the same thing. I don't know why my pump sprayer died.
What's the best hive for a new beekeeper? I'm guessing in terms of size.
That's hot. That'll be a 10 frame.
10 frames.
So make 8 frames too.
Okay.
How much sprayers working?
Follow-up question about larvae. I didn't have a protein pack on the hive. Wondering if I should transfer the bees to a new box with new frames.
Say that again.
Follow-up question about the larva that they had. I didn't have a protein pack on the hive.
Yep.
Wondering if I should transfer the bees to a new box with new frames.
Yeah, well, how many frames of bees do you have? That's the question. Is the hive crashing?
So, Meld, how many frames do you have? See if she gets back to us on that. Do you leave the entrance reducers we see on all year?
The ones that we had here, yes.
The ones that are here, yes. How often should I be adding? Oh, more sugar water when it runs out, correct?
When it runs out, yeah. Try not to let it run out, so you don't interrupt the production of the comb.
Should
Okay, I'm going to spray these bees. Decided to work. Okay, we sprayed them. What's another? Did she get back to you or not?
Sure. Give me a second here. Meld said the hive is full at over 80%.
With bees?
Yes.
I don't even. Wow. That's yeah, 80%. They should be handling that. Larva's crawling.
So the larva's crawling around, Meld? Yes.
Yeah, I would try transferring it to another hive. That's very unusual. That was a winter over colony.
And it was overwintered, Meld? She says lots of them.
Well, the only other thing you can do is put a beetle trap in there and see if we can knock them down that way.
Okay.
Is there moisture in the hive?
Sure. No, she says. And Joe got back to us. He's not sure why the dead out. Low mite counts all year with good honey production. Emailed Mark, but he's busy. Top deep was filled with capped honey. Bottom deep had sparse brood pattern and drawn comb, but not much else. All bees were gone.
That sounds like mite. If bees were all gone, that's a sign of mites. What you can do is take an empty comb, dip it in the sunlight so the sun bounces off the bottom. If you see little white specks in there, that's mite feces, and that's what killed your hive. Mite collapse. When did it die?
When did it die? We'll see if they get back to us. Someone else says, how do you prevent ants while feeding the sugar solution?
Wow, got ants already, huh?
I actually had that issue personally a while back. So I'm curious as well.
Put cinnamon on the inner cover. They don't like the smell of cinnamon. Make a ring on the outside, not in the hole where the bees can get it.
And Joe said early March.
Yeah. Well, there was 2 ways. It was either the mites or they starved. If they starved, they would be in the cells head first. No bees at all, it was the mites. They just didn't have enough bees to carry it through. The adult bees would fly out and come back. That's a sign of the mites.
Okay.
Like, did they do a mite count in October by chance?
We'll ask if they did a... I know some folks are having issues with the audio. When the wind picks up, it's a little more challenging, so bear with us if the wind picks up. That might be helpful for some of these questions, yeah. All right, with new hives, when would you go back in to check on the queen? And you mentioned the temperature being too cool to go into the hive. What is the ideal temperature to go into the hive to check things out?
I like 50 or higher.
50 or higher.
If you're going to start pulling lots of frames and moving things, I want to be at 55, 60.
Okay.
Just going to check for the queen if you've released, can even do 45 because you're not going to be messing around a lot. You're just checking to see the queen. If it's really cold, just wait. It's not going to hurt anything.
Okay. And how do you recommend preparing the 1 part sugar with water? Hot water, boil water, then mix some sugar?
Yeah. What I do is I do it bigger, but for the hobbyists, get a pan of water. It's 1-to-1 ratio by volume. So like a big tomato can or something, or a 2-cup glass measuring cup. So it'll be 2 cups of water to 2 cups of sugar. Bring the water to a boil, turn it down, and then stir the sugar in. You don't want to burn the sugar. If you do, you're going to give them dysentery, and then you got another problem to deal with. Okay, and then let it cool down before you put it on the hive.
All right. We seem to have a lull in questions. Maybe you want to
Okay.
continue with that, and
continue because I'm going to show you now. Say it's 35 out, and we want to dump the package because there's no warm weather for the next 5 days. The bees can't stay in this package forever. They've got to get into a colony. So what we're going to do, I sprayed them. I got to bop them. Get the queen out. I'm going to pull the cork. Remember, not this cork, but the cork up here where the candy is. A knife or a nail works good. Now, some people say stick a nail in there and pop a hole, but it's fresh candy. You shouldn't have to do that.
okay, that was a question from before that I'd missed, so that's good.
All right, I've got it out. I'm going to set this aside for a minute. I've sprayed them. I'm going to place this in the center. Off center, remember? So something like that, okay? Off center, right? Candy up. Now I'm going to squeeze another frame against it. And I'll put another frame in there just for them to crawl up on. So as an example, say it's 40, 35. We're lucky these bees, it was cool, so they weren't flying all around. So we put something on here. Picture this as a funnel. We're going to dump the bees into here so they don't go out on the ground. We don't want to lose any bees if we can help it. All right? So we put our queen in. We've checked and we pulled the cork, the right cork out. And we're going to bump them. And then we're going to shake them in. There'll still some will fly out, but you know, they'll go back, don't worry. And we're going to bump it again. All right, we'll set it out front. Take this off. We're going to start putting our frames in carefully. Remember, there's a ball of bees in the bottom, so we don't want to force them. Just like gravity taking down.
Someone's asking, do your hands get stung?
They won't sting you. They're more concerned about getting out of the box. I mean, if I put my hand on one, they will, but the package is pretty docile. But if they ran out of food or something, they would be an angry bunch of bees. So I always tell beginners to wear a veil. That's why I'm wearing a veil. Okay. If you're a beginner, you get stung in the face, it might turn you off. You know? Beekeeping is supposed to be fun. Plus, you don't want to get stung in the eye. That could be serious. So better to be safe than sorry. Correct? Now, this time of the year, down there, we have 2 hives. I'm not going to have to turn the camera out. Those were packages last year. We put them in about the same time. So we got a crop of honey off. okay? But remember, that was because it was all drawn home. So if you're on foundation, don't plan on a crop. If you get a crop of honey, fantastic. Your main objective this year is to get all the 20 frames of deep comb drawn out, because that's your brood nest. And you may need a honey super later on. If you do, you put one on. But the first year, very unusual if you get a crop of honey. But the year's not over yet. We don't know.
Someone's asking, with the new install, how frequently do we check the sugar water and when do we stop feeding?
Okay, good question. Hang on a sec. All right.
And the wind is picking up a bit, so.
Oh, she's right in front of me. All right, here's another pollen patty. I pull the paper back a little bit. So on days they can't fly, they're going to get protein. Here I'm putting it right about here. Put the cover on. If you don't have a stick to plug the hole, and not all intercovers have a slot up here. This company they did. If you don't have that, just put a piece of duct tape over it. That's all. All the holes are open. Here we go. Now the other thing, you see bees flying around? That's okay. What they're doing, they're orienting. By the end of the day, they'll find something and they'll be out foraging, okay? It'll take them 2-3 hours to, if it warms up. I don't know, it's supposed to go to 50 this afternoon. So then we put our box on top. Put our cover on. Behind me. Yeah, behind me. And there we are. And if you want, take a magic marker, right on the cover. Let's date today, 19/2020, new package. Unless you keep a diary, so you know when you put it in there, what's going on. In our hives, we've got many yards throughout the state. We always write on the cover what we did that day. And if we find something wrong, we put a question mark. That means something wasn't right. We could even make a note what was wrong. When we come back again and we still got the same problem, then we re-clean it or replace it, whatever. Another way to keep track of things. Are there any questions?
Just a few. Does your demeanor affect the bees' attitude?
Well, yeah. You start banging things around and banging them around, yeah, they're going to get mad. If you do not use smoke, you always use smoke, especially on a hive that's established.
Do I install protein patties if I have a nuke, which should arrive in early May?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
You're going to get 5 frames and they're going to have pollen in them, but, you know, give them a little help.
And how long should they?
Not a full patty, a small piece, like a quarter of it or a third of it.
Okay, and how long should they keep giving them pollen patties?
I'd say till the end of May. And you're going to find when a lot of natural pollen's coming in, and they're foraging every day, they won't take it as much.
Okay. And just one more time, the name of that feeder, the style feeder that's called?
It's called a Bee Smart feeder or a hive top intercover feeder.
Okay. What, if anything, do you do to protect the boxes in the event of severe storms, 50+ mile-an-hour wind?
Big rock or ratchet them down.
Okay. How long do you leave the upper entrance closed?
So we're done feeding.
Till we're done feeding. With a new install, how frequently do we check the sugar water? And I think that was a repeat question. When do we stop feeding? Okay.
You stop feeding when you put your honey super on, but you can't put your honey super on until you have all the comb drawn out from the deeps. You know, you're going to get people telling you you're wasting money. Natural sugar's coming in. feed. A rainy day, they stop drawing wax and you're going to get wavy comb. Your brood comb is your most valuable possession. You want all nice cells because that's where all the new bees are raised. Okay?
And just to clarify, after the first deep is full, do we add another deep or a super?
You're going to add another deep. You need 2 deeps to winter over.
Okay,
And you got to remember on the outside frames, they usually refuse to draw them. So eventually you're going to have to move them into the center when it gets warmer to get those to be finished drawing. Okay? We'll do that in our next workshop in May.
All right, let's see here. Did I miss anyone's question from earlier in the webinar? Oh, thanks, Ken, for putting the name of the feeder in there so folks can see it.
Now, I sell them if you can't find them.
Someone's asking, do you feed bees after the first year?
Yes, if in March they need them. You know, we had a very mild winter, so there was a high consumption of feed. You know, I found some bees that had 100 pounds of honey on them. And 3 weeks ago, they had 1 frame of honey left. I didn't feed them. I didn't have a starved colony.
Okay.
That's a beekeeper mistake. It can happen. So yeah, you should be checking your bees in March to make sure they have enough. And I go, when this weather breaks, I go check them again if you haven't been checking them. Because you don't want to have a hive starve out now. You know, things are just starting to come in. The dandelions are popping now, I see. And some of your maples. But, you know, when you get 4 or 5 days, they're caged up, they'll go through that feed right away.
Okay.
Because it takes tremendous amounts of feed to raise larvae.
And the mixture for the spray, that's 1-to-1?
1-to-1.
Okay, and do you put an entrance reducer on a new hive?
Entrance reducer? Yeah, you can. I would. Just to start out to give them a chance once they get established. Unless it's the only hive in the yard. But it wouldn't hurt just in case a mouse tries to go in there. But use the large opening, not the small one. Maybe it makes sense. Did you hear that? Large opening, not the small one.
Okay. I think that's good for questions.
One more?
I think that's it.
All right, well.
Excellent. For the spray, do you make with the syrup process or just straight water and sugar?
Well, I make a syrup out of it. You have to dissolve the sugar.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you want to make it simulate the nectar.
You said thank you.
Because nectar is 80% water, really.
Okay. And someone's asking one more time, what type of hive for a new beekeeper? I think they're curious about the size.
Well, you have the Langstroth hive, which is frames, movable frames. That's what I always recommend. There's all kinds of other hives out there, but for a new beekeeper, it's a lot harder to take care of. I was keeping something simple. A Langstroth hive, you can run deeps and then mediums for your honey supers, and back problems or something, you can run mediums. So they're not too heavy. A deep full honey weighs between 80 and 100 pounds. But let me say this. So it's full of honey. You don't have to pick it up with all 10 frames. Take 5 frames out and set them in another box. Now you can lift it off. Because, you know, they winter over better in deeps, but nothing wrong with mediums.
How frequently do you check new bees in the first month?
Well, you're going to check it on 7 days. If you got eggs, and you probably even see some young larvae, I would wait 2 weeks before I check it again. Especially if you're on foundation.
Okay.
Then I give it a check every 2 weeks. Because you don't want to miss that point when they're on the 7th to the 8th frame. You want to get that second box on.
Someone's asking, I'm brand new. Can you purchase drawn frames?
Yeah, I see them on the internet, but you know what? You don't know the history. What are you purchasing? Somebody else's problem? Experienced beekeepers purchase them, but the same thing about used equipment. I don't believe in buying used equipment. You don't know the history. Why did the person get out? You know, you hear stories, somebody found a barn full of bee equipment from 50 years ago. But did they have foul brood or something? You know, it'd be a shame to go invest in bees and then you come down with something and you got to burn it. That's a personal thing if you want to gamble.
Do you use the syrup in the can that comes with the package?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can dump that in after. But we already had the full containers. So.
Could you describe the process for new beekeepers getting a nuke instead of a package?
Yeah, we got a nuke box over here. We don't have any nukes here because we're not ready yet.
A little waterlogged there, huh?
Yeah, I don't know why. Anyway, your nuke's going to come in a box like this, or it's going to come in a wooden box. Let me throw some frames in here to make it look real. The mouse made his home in here.
Oh, fun.
All right, you're going to pick up your nuke from the nuke producer. This one has a door on the front. When you pick it up, the door will be closed. Wrong way. When you pick it up, the door will be closed. You're going to keep the door closed. You're going to pick it up like this. You're going to bring it home. Set it next to your new hive. Whether it's a dead out or a brand new one. Take all the frames out. Now say you can't pick it up till 8 o'clock at night because you work during the day. I don't know how many people are working now, but say you do. Bring it home, set it up next to the hive where it's going, and open the entrance up at night. The bees won't fly out, but when they know they're caged in, after an hour or two, they start running around in a circle. And what they do is they start sweating, just like you and I. And that'll kill half the hive right there. Then you can come out in the morning and install it, okay? Or say it's raining. This way here, they're good in there for a day or two, okay? So you're gonna bring it home. You're gonna lightly smoke the cover, put it down for a minute. Here's my hive, make believe, okay? All right, we've smoked them. We'll get the cover out of the way. We're going to take the first frame out of the outside, whether it's the left or the right. So you're going to push it over. And you're going to lift it very slowly because we don't want to hurt the queen if she's on there. Okay? You're going to put that first frame in. Right in the center. Let me take these out. We're going to put it right in the center. Now, in the order you take them out, that's the way the order you put them in, because what you have here is a brood nest, a nucleus. That's what it is. We've got a brand new queen, all different stages of larva, probably some pollen in there. And there'll be some drones probably, and you have a new fresh queen. So we don't want to really break that new stuff, nest up, because it's still cool this time of the year. So we're going to take them out. What I do is I slide it over before I lift it out. Now I take this over. Now, get ahead of myself. I put the next one on. We don't know where the queen is. You see what I'm doing? Putting it on the outside of the first frame, and then I'm going to slide it in. We're going to do it with the rest of it. Move it out, up slowly, drop it in, and then slide it in. We'll do that to all 5 frames. Oh, there's a medium, okay. That's a deep, okay. Same thing. With the last frame, we're going to slide it in. Now we have a space on each side, and we still don't know where that queen is. So we're going to take one here, slide it down, and then over. Now the next one can just go right in because there's no bees here, okay? And we're going to do the same thing over here. Put it down, put it over. Now, no bees flying around out front. That's okay, no problem. Now we're going to slide this one over. And get the last frame in. Now there's going to be, I'm not going to dump this nuke box because there's mouse in here. Well, there was one. You're going to have bees in your box. You take your box, hold it over there, and just bounce it upside down. And everybody will go in. And you're going to put a bottom board on, and the feeder that you have, whether it's a jar or a Bee Smart feeder. I like the Bee Smarts because you can cover it with a medium soup. Okay, jar, you got to use a deep. Or you go to a restaurant, if you can find one, get the large pickle jars. They work good too. Do not use plastic jars. When it gets very warm, sometimes they collapse and they'll push all the syrup out and you'll drown the bees. Okay. Any questions on a nuke?
Oh, see if we have questions on a nuke. We have a couple other questions. Do you put electric fence around hive at the beginning of starting a hive or wait until honey is starting to be produced? Also, what type of system do you use?
You put electric fence up before you get your bees. You just spent $150 or $200 on bees. You don't want the bear to come in that night.
Ah,
They can smell a beehive 5 miles away from the research they've done.
okay.
I use, we have solar fencers in all ours because our yards are out where there's no electricity. So if you got to use the solar, I like the Paramount 12. That's 1.5 joules. You need a minimum of a joule. I like to see 1 joule. Joule is the punch, the power. That's what you want. If you have 110 volts accessible, you can buy a 1 joule, 2 joule power charger for $99 online.
What size
People
hole?
don't have the luxury of having electricity.
What size hole should we have on our reducer? Our package is installed for 2 weeks. We had it at 1 inch so far.
No, largest opening on that reducer.
The largest
There
size.
should be 2 openings. Let me see if I have one on the truck. I know I do. Hang on a second.
Let's go see what he can find.
In that box, in the cardboard box.
And while we're getting that reducer, when you go into the hive to check the queen and activity, I'm assuming we're looking for the brood. What would be things to look for that would need our attention? And how do you know a hive is about to swarm?
Okay. Hang on, we're going to do the reducer question.
Gotcha.
There's 2 openings, this one here and the large one here. This is the one you want to be using. But you still got to allow air to go in. With a small opening, you're not going to get the amount of air you should have. You need an air exchange. Okay?
All right.
Everybody see that?
You can see it pretty well from my view here.
Okay.
I think we're good.
What are the things you want to make sure that the queen's still laying? You want to make sure you're giving them plenty of room and you get the second box on in a timely manner. If you don't get that box on, when they get to the 9th frame, she may think about swarming if she has nowhere to lay eggs. Even though she's a fresh queen, you know, they say a fresh queen won't swarm the first year, but if they get crowded, they will. That's the other thing I should mention on a nuke. A nuke is not like a package. Think about it. A package has, you figure, worker bee takes 21 days to hatch. It's 4 to 5 days before the queen gets out of the cage. So now we're at, say we're getting to 29 days. And she may lay eggs immediately or she may wait a day. So say we got 30 days. So from the time you dump that package, 30 days later is when you get your first new worker bees. So traditionally packages, sometimes the population goes down a little bit. Not that it's dangerous, but just remember, when you get a nuke, you have all stages of brood and cat brood. So a nuke is going to expand a lot more rapidly. So you can't treat it like a package, you know, 2 or 3 weeks later, I'll check. That nuke, if it's all cat brood, frame, totally cat brood on both sides equals 2 frames of bees. So that's a lot of space you're going to have. So on nukes, you got to pay attention to see how fast or rapidly they're expanding. And they can swarm too if they get crowded.
Will you be presenting a workshop on how to check on the hive to assure the queen is alive and there are eggs?
Hopefully in May, if we get this corona turn the thing over.
Gotcha. I have a strong hive that wintered over. When should I reverse my deeps?
Okay, good question. When should you reverse your deeps? If they're laying eggs on the bottom, don't reverse them. When you do that, you're splitting the brood nest. So on a cold night, one part of that nest is going to die because the bees go up to the top. If they're on the bottom, let them be. That means they've already pushed her down. They're taking care of the problem. If they haven't, you can reverse them. But if you don't have any honey in that bottom one, you're going to have to put a frame of honey or you're going to have to feed because they're all going to move up for space. They get up there, there's no feed, they're going to starve. So it depends. You know, if they're down there, I leave them alone. I know people reverse no matter what. It all depends on the situation. Eventually, they're going to push down.
And this might be a similar question. Why is it necessary to reverse the frames and how often?
Well, you're getting them to move up quicker. But here again, if you don't have any honey, or you got honey in the box you're going to reverse, take some frames out of there, or you have to feed it.
Okay.
It all depends what's going on. I reverse, but it's not mandatory. And right now, this year, I haven't had to reverse very much on wintered over hives. They're already on the bottom 4 weeks ago.
Got it.
So what I'd be worried about is swarm cells. I'd be checking for swarm cells every 7 days between the two deeps on an established colony. You can see a lot of swarming. And right now, I know the weather's crazy, but I would recommend putting at least one honey super on now so they have a place to store nectar. Dandelions are out, and all your maples are going to flower. You're not going to get a honey crop off those, but if the brood nest is full of brood, they're looking for a place to store the nectar. They're just going to store the nectar.
Okay.
That's just what we do.
Someone's asking about the order in the nukes. I said, didn't you just put those on the opposite side as they were in the nuke? Does that make a difference?
No, just keep them all together.
Okay, just keeping them
Now, if you
together.
remember, I said I put them in the center because that's where the food supply is going to be. Some people put it to the left or the right. I just put it in the center.
And you said the minimum joules is 1?
You can get away with a half joule, but if you can get a joule, I get a joule. And the other thing I didn't mention is we bait it with bacon. Bears are very intelligent. So you get bacon on the fence with a clothespin. They go lick it, they get shocked 2 or 3 times. They associate that with pain, they stay away. You know, we have bears at our house right in our backyard. They hear that thing clicking, they keep on walking. They don't even look at it. That hurts. And people says it attracts bears. Well, it's all right if it attracts them. You want to educate them. Because remember, bears are very intelligent. You know, they're in the circus. They make them do tricks. They can train them. So you're training the bear, stay away from your fence. It's going to hurt them.
So a related question, is this method for nuke used even if adding additional frames with drawn comb? We had been instructed in previous year to add frame of comb on outside, then 2 frames from nuke, then another frame of drawn comb, etc.
Okay, that depends how crowded the nuke is. When we have our nukes, if they come in and they're crowded, we'll tell people to put a frame of comb between. In other words, if you've got 4 frames of cat brood, which can happen if it gets warm, yes, you can do that.
We are rookies. Where do you put the reducer?
On the front,
So
right here,
make sure this is working right there.
like that.
And we have those metal ones in place, correct?
Yeah, we have the metal ones. Those are mouse guards. If you don't have a reducer and you want to reduce it, you can just take some duct tape, tape up all but 10 holes. And that would equal the large opening here.
Okay.
So you're going to put it right here. Right on the edge of the hive. And we usually drill a hole and put a nail in it because skunks like to pull them off. Okay?
Got it. I have 2 deeps that are full of bees. Should I perform a walk away split to prevent swarming?
Oh, boy. Well, walk away splits.
And maybe clarify what a walk away split is, because
A walk away split. I don't have to open the hive to do that. Walk away splits when you take 2 or 3 frames of brood out, making sure you have eggs and bees, and you put them in another box, they should raise an emergency queen cell. Walk-away splits are good, but just remember now, do the math. 21 days for a worker bee from an egg, 16 days for a new queen, depending what day they start making it. That's if they find enough young larvae. So you're talking 45 days before you get your first new bee. For a mated queen, you're going to start raising bees in 2 days after she's released. The other thing is, walk-away splits, if they don't get the right size larva, you're going to have a queen that they hatch, and their ovaries aren't going to be fully developed. So right away, when they figure that out, they're going to supersede her. It's a gamble. I mean, they work. I mean, if you make a walk-away split with swarm cells, yeah, that'll work. Swarm cells, you know, the queen put the egg in there and they got the right age larva. But emergency cells, that's what they are, emergency cells. They may work and they may not.
Okay.
It can work. I know people that do it, and that's all they do.
Someone's
Trial
asking,
and error.
what's that?
Trial and error.
Trial and error. What do you mean by reversing frames? Do you actually reverse the boxes? I think they're curious.
Reverse the box.
What's that?
We reverse the box.
Okay.
You put the top on the bottom and the bottom on the top. I don't recommend them doing it unless you really have to.
Okay. Should you remove any swarm cells that are found?
Swarm cells, if they're capped, don't remove them. That's your new queen. What I would try and do is find the queen, take her out with some frames of brood, and when the queen's run, they'll think they swarmed. And that's not guaranteed.
Okay. When is the best time to purchase bees, and is it too late to start a new hive this year?
Well, we're only in April. This is a good time. You can get bees up till June 1st.
Excellent.
Just got to get some equipment. I guess the supply houses are like 10 days behind. But there's some people in the state that sell equipment. We sell equipment. There's other beekeepers that sell equipment.
I use poly tape for a fence. My one hive is surrounded by a 12 by 12 section of this tape. How many ground rods would I need for such a small area?
Well, they recommend two, one by the sending unit and one on the diagonal.
All right. And what do swarm cells look like?
Look like a peanut hanging on the bottom of the cell.
Okay. And we got a nice compliment. They said we did a great session.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Excellent. What do you think? Good time to?
Yeah, what time?
10:12. We
You
did
don't
good.
have questions. I mean, I wish it was a little warmer. We could crack a hive, but I don't want to take a chance.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. If you missed anything, this session is recorded, and so we will send this out later. It might take a while for it to process, so don't worry if you don't get it tonight. It might go out tomorrow morning. Take some time for the video to kind of process. In the meantime, if you stay up to date on Connecticut Beekeepers workshop schedule as well as Massaro Farms workshop schedule, we actually have one next week on backyard chicken keeping if you're interested in that. So lots of fun things coming up. Thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate it. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Meeting.